Hello, welcome to Living and Learning. I'm Allison Kinnear, and every Wednesday at 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, I hop onto Facebook Live and talk about living and learning. Today, we are talking about intention. We've been talking about it all month, but we're talking about intention as well as recovery. I'm so excited to talk about this. Just this past week, I was listening to Michael Gervais. He is a sports psychologist and who works with elite athletes. He currently is on contract with the Seattle Seahawks, which is around where I live. Go Hawks! And he works to help people develop the mindset, to help athletes develop the mindset to excel in their craft. And one of the things he said recently was, we don't really have to talk to our players about how to work out. That's not usually a problem. But we do always have to have conversations with them about recovery and how to recover. And it immediately clicked with me that this is what happens with professionals. This is what happens in the tech world. This is what happens in people's professional lives, where we don't necessarily need to talk about people about how to work harder. I mean, some people we do for sure, right? Like the people that don't have a good work ethic, or they don't show up well for things, like that's not exactly who I'm talking to. You know, I'm assuming that most of you are probably really highly capable in your work. So the issue is not about like, how do you work, right? Like, you don't necessarily maybe need coaching around how to be a better employee or how to be a harder worker. However, I do find that for so many people, there needs to be more support and more coaching around recovery and rest, so that it doesn't lead to burnout, so it doesn't lead to panic attacks at work, so that it doesn't lead to disrupted sleep and waking up at 3 a.m. with your mind spinning on all the things that you need to do, right? If any of those things are happening, then chances are you maybe need a little more support around recovery, because those are kind of mental indications that potentially could become physical indications. Just like an athlete, you can't push. You're going to hurt your body and you're going to pull yourself out of the game. That's what I see happening. That's what happened with me. That's what happened with several of my colleagues. Many people I know have either been pulled out of the game because suddenly their performance is suffering, or because they just can't take it anymore, right? Like, there's not necessarily a physical breakdown, but there's often a mental breakdown. That's the burnout. That's the panic attacks. That's the lack of sleep and the high blood pressure and all of those things. So this piece around recovery is so important, because it's counterintuitive. We think, well, if we recover, if we rest, then I'm not going to be as good. I'm not going to excel. But what actually happens, similar to the athlete, is that when we recover, it helps us excel even more. So I want to tell a story, but before I do, I just want to acknowledge the people who have hopped on. Hello, Vita. Hello, Beth. Hello, Deborah. Hi, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited that you're all here. Okay, let me go back to it. So I was just having a recent conversation with a friend of mine, telling her about how I remembered for so many years, I was always on the verge of burnout if I wasn't like truly there. I was probably more on the verge of a panic attack, but I was constantly pushing, constantly driving forward. I never took a break. My lunches, either they were working lunches or they happened at my desk while I was working. Like, I took a break to pee and to get more water or snacks. That was it. It was always business all the time, nonstop. And that was the case not only with me, but with all of my colleagues. That's just kind of the culture of where I was at. And I know this is the culture in many tech companies, is like, if you're having lunch, that's great, but it better be a working lunch. And so you see people working on their computers, whether or not they're working on business stuff or personal stuff. It's just like kind of constantly being on, constantly pushing forward. And this is what comes up in us, right? We have an intention, we have a goal, we have somewhere that we want to go, somewhere that we want to be. And so we just push ourselves forward. And I remember talking to my therapist about how incredibly depleted and incredibly exhausted and incredibly burnt out I was. And one of the things she asked me was, do you take any breaks? And I said, oh, no breaks. And she and I talked about that a little bit. And she said, what about a 15-minute break? Could you do a 15-minute break? And even though I knew the research, even though I knew there's loads of research that shows that workers are more productive if they take an hour-long lunch break, if they take a full break, they are better employees. Even though I knew that research that existed in my brain, I was like, 15 minutes is too far. Like, there's no way I can take a 15-minute break. No way. Absolutely not. The world would fall apart. I was basically like, my direct reports would need me. There could be an emergency. My performance has suffered enough. I don't want people to think I'm slacking. I don't want my colleagues to think that I'm not pulling my weight. I don't want, it's like I have to really be on because people's perceptions of me really matter. And so we had a conversation, and it was like 15 minutes, absolutely not. But she talked me down to 5 minutes. She said, what about a 5-minute break? Can you do that? Can you do a 5-minute break? And I thought about it, and I was like, that is a stretch. That is like absolutely a stretch. But I've probably been to the bathroom for 5 minutes, so I think I'll be okay, but only 5 minutes. I'm not going over. So I set a timer on my phone. And part of what she recommended is like, it can't be a break in the building. It has to be a leave the building break. And again, that felt way too much. That felt like a huge stretch, but I did it. And I walked out, and it sucked. It sucked big time. And what I did was, for 5 minutes, I was like walking and just like, this sucks. Everyone's going to think I'm slacking. I'm going to get fired. There's going to be an emergency, and nobody's going to know where I am, even though I told all my colleagues it doesn't matter, and I'm already in trouble, and why am I doing this? And so I just did that for 5 minutes, and then I came back in the building, and no one looked up. Like, no one even noticed that I was gone. And I was like, that's interesting. And the next day, because I committed to do this for 1 week, the next day I got up, same thing. I can't believe I have to do this. This totally sucks. No one else takes breaks. Why do I have to take breaks? Am I such a weak person? Like, 5 minutes. That's all I did, was just like, this is terrible. Yeah, nobody noticed yesterday, but everyone's going to notice today, because now I've got a pattern of not showing up and not being present at work. I came back to the building, and again, no one looked up. No one noticed I was gone. I was like, that's interesting. So the third day I was like, I hate this. Like, I can't believe I have to do this again. Like, this is terrible. I set my timer, told everyone I was leaving, walked out of the building. Again, on the walk, and I'm just like, this sucks. This is terrible. I'm going to get fired. Like, that's all that was going on in my head. I was about 2 minutes into the walk. And suddenly I was like, okay, wait, hold on a sec. Perhaps this walk should not be me like spinning about how terrible things are going to be, because clearly the last 2 days I've come back and it hasn't been a problem. And I don't think the point of this break is for me to like ramp up my anxiety. I think the point of this break is to actually take a break, right? And so I suddenly I actually like physically stopped, and I remembered a lesson from my mindfulness-based stress reduction class, because I was all hands on deck around my stress. And I remember taking a mindful walk, and a mindful walk is simply getting really in tune with your senses. What are you seeing? How can you see without making meaning of what you're seeing? It's like, oh, there's a tree. Oh, there's an image that, there's an object that is tree-like. Like, oh, let me just like look at the colors. There's browns, there's greens. What am I feeling? Oh, I can feel the wind in my face. What am I hearing? Oh, I hear birds. Like, to get really in tune with that. And so for the rest of the 2.5 minutes, I just did that. And suddenly my walking slowed down, my breathing slowed down, and I was able to tune into something that wasn't the frantic rat race of go, 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 do, do, do. And I was in recovery, right? And so in that recovery, suddenly I returned to the office, relaxed. Again, no one noticed I had left. I returned a little more calmly, and I was like, aha, my energy tank was filled. This is the power of recovery. And I'll tell you, what turned into 5 minutes eventually finally did become 15, which then became a half hour, which then became maybe 45 minutes. Maybe not every day, but it happened more often. I was able to relax and actually allow myself to be in that recovery state. And what's interesting is my performance got better. My performance reviews got better. The feedback I got from my colleagues was better. And so I had this cognitive dissonance for a really long time of, I don't get it, because I feel like I'm slacking off by being in recovery, but I'm getting more positive feedback from people than I ever was before. So it's a confusing state to be in. But it's interesting, because what happens is when we're in recovery, we're able to kind of mend ourselves. We're able to refill our energy tank, and we're then better poised to push hard when we need to push hard. This is the beauty of recovery. This is what I talk about when I talk about slingshot time. It's like we have to move back. We have to pull backwards. We have to like rest. We have to be in recovery so that we can launch forward. So when it comes to the intentions that you set for yourself, when it comes to the goals that you have for yourself, I encourage you to, yes, push hard. I don't doubt. I'm seeing who's on here. Jennifer, Angie, like, I'm seeing the people who are on here. I know you push. I know you know how to push. And I encourage you that when you can recover, you can push with a higher quality. Your work becomes better. So don't forget that recovery. And I encourage you to give yourself permission this week to recover. Recover whenever you need it. And with that, I leave you. Next month, we are talking about confidence. We're talking all about confidence next month. So I cannot wait to dive into that. And when we can recover more, guess what? Our confidence comes back too. So a little sneak preview for that. I wish you a wonderful week of living and learning. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful. I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.